And we are live, and this time only 2 minutes late, which I think might actually be a record for the channel. So,
Nice.
yay. Hi, Jason.
Hello.
Okay. So, our next guest on the podcast is a longtime friend of the show and fellow podcaster himself. Not only does he host multiple podcasts every week, but he produces them as well. And believe me, from what I've seen, he's one of the hardest working podcast producers I've ever met. Additionally, he's a music producer working for labels like Night Drive Music. I lost my notes there. Working for labels like Night Drive Music, Tarantic Records. There we go. See, I was thinking tantric, but that would be an entirely different kind of music.
That's a different genre for sure.
And self-producing his own music under the name Yellow Gold. He's a man of many talents. Jason Howell, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, it's good to be here. It's been a while since I've heard those label names. I have not created music that has been released on a label in a very long time, but it's nice to revisit them.
Right.
In this interview.
And they're still on your LinkedIn.
So okay. Well,
so
because at a certain point I was like, I'm going to put this in here because it makes it seem a lot more official that I make music because I have and meanwhile that was like when I was producing more electronic music, which was like early to mid 2000s ish.
Okay.
And and honestly, it's also a testament to how out of the LinkedIn game I actually am. I hardly visit LinkedIn, to be honest.
Indeed, LinkedIn is one of my superpowers. So yeah, that's kind of how I roll, is on the LinkedIn. So, but
I don't spend much time there.
So the last time you were on here, we were talking about the state of Android, but it was 2020. So it's been a while since you've been on here, and Android's been going through a lot of stuff. Most recently, Android 12. You just finished off your Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro reviews on the All About Android podcast. Very much enjoyed listening to those. Cool. So I just got my own Pixels. I did a Pixel 6 review for LifeWire. And I just got my own in somewhere. I think I put it in a drawer. But
so you got the 6. Did you get the 6 Pro as well, or the 6 to start?
I just got the 6, and I'm only going to get the 6 because, as much of a fan as I am of optical zoom, I can't see spending the extra 300 bones for it. That's a lot. That's a big ask. That's a big ask.
I think that's the right answer. Because I used the 6 Pro, I reviewed it, and then Leo went to Oaxaca for a week, and his 6 Pro wasn't delivered in time. So I was like, dude, just take mine. Then you can use it and get used to it, and that'll force me to use the 6, because otherwise I'd just be lazy and stay on the 6 Pro or whatever. And so I ended up using the 6 for a week, and at the end, like I would prefer the 6 over the 6 Pro for sure. The only thing that keeps me on the 6 Pro is the optical zoom, which is just the lens that I prefer to use.
Sure. Well, and you have kids. So, I mean, that's...
Yeah, it comes in handy, very handy.
Yeah, it's my working theory that, like, anybody who has small children usually is going to prefer a telephoto over a wide-angle zoom. So that's,
totally.
That's where I am. That's where my podcast, co-producer Cliff is. So, yeah, because we put kids up on stages and we're way too far away, and we need to get closer without making everybody behind us angry.
Yep. Or they're on a swim team, and those swim lanes are long. At least that's the case in our house.
Oh, nice.
Two girls on swim team. So like trying to record them or take pictures of them while they're doing it, that telephoto comes in handy.
My daughter is contemplating swimming herself as a sport. So now that she has abandoned gymnastics because she's broken 6 bones in the last 3 months.
Holy moly. Okay.
Yeah, she has not had a good year.
Swim's not as much of a contact sport as gymnastics is.
Right.
It's also a really good life skill to have. That's one thing that I really love about my kids being in swim is like, they're not learning. Like, I'm sure you can find a lot of life skills in a lot of different sports, but at least with swim, like that's literally a sport that skill can save your life. So,
right. Yeah, totally. Although there was a gymnastics movie the one time where like 2 gymnasts were like facing down like 3 thugs, and they like just started doing like back handsprings and crap, and like just freaking them out, and like they ran away. And I'm like, you know what? That would intimidate me too.
I hadn't considered the kung fu aspects of gymnastics. That's true. It's a very good point.
Indeed. So, Adita is here. I don't even know if I pronounced that correctly. I apologize. I'm just going to call you A. So A Man was talking about the Pixel 6 and was wondering about the in-display fingerprint sensor. Now, personally, I don't like in-display fingerprint sensors. Never really have. But there's been a lot of commentary about how the fingerprint sensor is very slow. I was wondering if you've run into that particular issue with your Pixels.
My preference is definitely a hardware fingerprint sensor over an in-display sensor. That's just my preference, period.
Sure.
If in-display fingerprint sensor has to be there, like I get used to it, right? I know a lot of people have complained about the 6 and the 6 Pro fingerprint sensor. I'm having a really hard time differentiating it being any better or any worse than the majority of other fingerprint sensors that I've used. Certainly, I've used phones. There have been some OnePlus phones that I've used that it seemed like the fingerprint sensor was so fast. But I don't have the problems that it seems like a lot of people are having with the 6 and 6 Pro. So I'm fine with it. It's been working fine for me. I don't know if I just, if I was more purposeful with my training of my finger, or made sure that my finger wasn't sweaty when I trained it, or what. I haven't even trained like the same finger multiple times, which is something that you can do when these sensors don't work as well. I haven't even done that, and still I'm having fine experience with the 6 Pro fingerprint sensor. That's just me, though. It seems like a lot of people are having issues, so I'm not saying it's not an issue. It's just not
for sure. Yeah, me too. And like my Pixel 6 review went out after I'd had the phone for like 4 days, and my personal Pixel 6 just arrived yesterday. So I'm working on a total of 5 days with this device so far. So I haven't had nearly enough time to form a really cogent opinion about it. But same deal. I would say, like, I'm just being more deliberate about it than you have to be. I don't know. So, but anyway, so I want to talk about you a little bit, because that's what Beyond a Doubt is here for. It's cool. to talk about the creators. And you've had an interesting journey. You started off as a video producer for, was it CBS, I believe it was?
Well, it was CNET prior to them being acquired by CBS. So I started in 2005.
Okay, gotcha. And then you moved over to TWiT, and you've been there pretty much ever since, which is, and I thought it was an interesting transition because, obviously TWiT is renowned throughout the tech industry, but when it comes to like actual like size of the company, going from something like CNET, down to like, maybe I would say more of like a mid-size company, something like that. TWiT.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's pretty small. I think we have less than 20 employees right now. So it's a pretty small outfit. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, what was, what kind of drew you? Cause what kind of drew you to the TWiT network? What was it that, made you want to make that jump?
Well, I mean, it was a couple of reasons. When I was at CNET, and I finally kind of transitioned into working and kind of, helping to lead their podcast division, I was working with a friend of mine, Tom Merritt. And we were doing a podcast called Buzz Out Loud, and we just worked really well together. Me, Tom, Molly Wood, that whole podcast team, we worked really closely together. Tom had previous kind of history with Leo Laporte, who runs the TWiT network. And so when Leo decided, I think this was like 2010-ish, that he was going to take what he was already doing with This Week in Tech, the podcast, and a handful of other things, and he was going to build out a full-blown network and really kind of commit to it. He reached out to Tom and said, "Hey, Tom, I want you to be a part of this." So Tom left CNET to go there. And then Tom reached out to me and had convinced them and said, "Hey, do you want to work with me over here?" Nice. And, Tom really was very instrumental to me as far as learning what I knew about podcasting, as far as ultimately giving me the opportunity to be involved in podcasting. When he pulled me over to Buzz Out Loud at CNET, it was 2006. And, he was I remember him specifically saying, like, "Hey man, like, this is early on podcasting. If I don't know, who knows how things go, but if you come over now, you could be at the front of the podcast wave." And I was like, okay, well, there are many opportunities in life to be at the front of a wave of anything. So let's do it. Not to mention it sounded like a lot of fun. So when he went over to TWiT and reached out to me, I missed working with him. I knew, Leo and respected the TWiT network and everything. And it seemed like a cool opportunity. So I was like, why
Nice.
not? I'm young enough. Let's do it.
Yeah. And I mean, so like in my world, I consider like the debut of Serial to be like when podcasting went from, something that, nerds do to something that a lot more mainstream. And like when you're talking about like 2006, 2007, that's almost a decade pre-Serial. So I mean, you definitely were getting in on the ground floor of that or is that right? The leading the wave, whatever. Yeah, you were definitely early on the trend. So well done. Like, and I remember, like, personally, I always thought that podcasting back in the day, I was always like one of those, like, why would I want to listen to a podcast? That's just like radio that's not good enough to be radio. And like, it's and it's funny because like back in the day, there were a lot of examples that I could point to that were just not very good. But I mean, obviously the TWiT network kind of knew what they were doing, and Tom Merritt, I mean, he's one of the founding fathers of like podcasting as far as I'm concerned. And so yeah, it's a very cool transition. So now that you've been at TWiT so that's been what, 14, 15 years now? Is that?
Well, no, I think I've been there at TWiT now about 11 years.
11 years.
I'm
okay.
on 11 right now. Yeah. Which is still a very long time. Like that's,
it is.
That's longer. I think that's the longest I've been anywhere as far as working, CNET, I was there for 5 years and that felt long at the time, but yeah, I've been at TWiT for more than twice that now.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what are you doing there these days? Like what's Leo got you in charge of? I know you've got a few different shows. You've got All About Android. You've got the one Hands on Tech, I believe is the one. What else you got going on over there?
Well, the pandemic has kind of shifted things around a lot. I mean, it's no question that when the COVID lockdowns happened, the ad market, went all haywire and everything. And so there have been a lot of restructuring and stuff at TWiT around like what shows we have and, getting rid of shows that weren't quite performing that, on one hand, we would have loved to keep, but at a certain point we have to continue kind of paying for the people that we have and everything that. So Hands on Tech actually doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't. It was ended. I can't remember how many months ago, but that was our reviews show. But right now, so what I'm doing right now, I'm producing and hosting All About Android, producing and co-producing and co-hosting Tech News Weekly with Micah Sargent, who also works at TWiT. That's a lot of fun. And then primarily my other duties right now are producing for Leo on some of his biggest shows. This Week in Tech, of course, is kind of like the premier show on the network. That show's been around since I think 2004. And when you're talking about technology podcasts, like podcasts, yes, like this thing called podcast that didn't exist hardly, and definitely not by name right around 2004, but technology podcasts and panel discussions around technology. I mean, TWiT is one of, if not the first that did that. And so that's kind of the driving force of the network. So I produced that show for Leo, which is really, and it's a pretty involved role because I'm reaching out to people throughout the entire, tech journalism landscape.
Sure.
And, testing new people, bringing favorites onto the panel and ultimately trying to create like a solid recipe. It's like building a recipe. It's like you want someone who has their legacy foundation in technology, someone who can provide some kind of like energy and color, speak to some color on the show. And like, if you can get the elements right, it makes for a really engaging show. So I produce that for Leo. Also do produce This Week in Google. Also produce Security Now with Steve Gibson. And then when Leo is out, if Leo goes on a vacation or whatever, he needs people to kind of fill his shoes for ad requirements. I'm going to, the advertisers require in network hosts to read most of those ads. And so I will fill in for him and, drop in on This Week in Google as I did the last couple of weeks while he was gone. And that's a lot of fun as well. So pretty darn busy. Let's just say that.
So you're doing a couple of things over there. That's cool. Well, no, it's busy. It's awesome, and like I said, I hold the highest regard for TWiT. Obviously, All About Android is my go-to show for, like, on the TWiT network, and I check out the other shows when I have time. But
Yeah, it's a
these
lot of
days
content,
it is,
and our content is not short. Like, it's not short form content. These are longer discussions. They happen once a week, but like a TWiT episode could last 2.5 hours. This Week in Google, same deal. All About Android. We've tried to, we saw our running time creeping there a while back, and so we made some changes to the show to kind of peel it back, and now it's around an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Which can kind of pose a challenge, especially right now. We're still kind of feeling the effects of this, like, lockdown, work from home world.
Yeah.
That's come about so quickly with COVID, and so you've got less commute time, and a lot of people, that's when they listen to shows, is when
Well,
they're
I listen to
commuting.
shows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so when you're not commuting, it's harder. It can be harder to find that time. And so, at least for All About Android, we thought, well, maybe if we shorten things down, it makes it even more palatable. And I don't know, we're constantly playing with those recipes.
Sure, sure. Hey, we have a question from the gallery from IAR 1980. They're watching from the
Well,
UK,
that's
and they
cool.
catch up a lot of the shows on the following day. Why have the comment sections been disabled on YouTube for respective uploaded videos? What's up with
Well,
that, Jason? What are you afraid of?
I can't speak for the powers that be that make these decisions. I am not a part of the decision making process necessarily on things like this. I think at the end of the day, what it is moderation is really hard.
It is.
Moderating comments, and let's be frank, let's be real, because I've certainly experienced it on YouTube. Sometimes comment sections in YouTube can get really toxic and really
Yeah.
ugly. And
Yeah.
so at a certain point, I'm guessing that the decision was made that, like, let's put the focus on the content. It sucks to not, give people that opportunity to pitch in, but they have other opportunities to pitch in. We have we have something called Club TWiT, which is a members, like an ad-free subscription-based version of all of our shows. So all the ads are removed, but you get access to a Discord channel. And I promise I'm not bringing this up to plug it. But what I'm saying this for is we have these other elements, these other avenues that are easier for us to moderate, so we don't spend all of our time combing through these things and or finding a toxic comment that's embedded there that we missed months ago, that's just kind of been sitting there riding the coattails of this video. And I think, with YouTube, it had been a years long struggle, and at a certain point they were like, you know what, this just kind of isn't worth it. We'd love to keep it open, but we got to shut it down.
I wholeheartedly agree. And speaking as someone who has like 2 weeks of comments that I still need to go through on my own YouTube channel, because my poor YouTube channel is so neglected. But yeah, I totally agree with that. So
yeah, it's a challenge. It's hard.
Yeah, and especially with a small operation, like you said, you're like less than 20 people. So that moderators are just another person that has to fit in the seat. So
I mean, I feel like content moderation is just such a now challenge. I mean, in so many different facets, there's so much, happening in this world, that all comes down to how these the big tech platforms are moderating their platforms. I mean, heck, that's largely the issue that Facebook, Meta, whatever you want to call them, are facing when it comes to misinformation on the platform. I mean, it's really hard. It's a hard challenge, because you want to give people the opportunity to speak their mind. But that also opens up the opportunity for a whole lot of other bad stuff to kind of get through. And yeah, you can't be seen as doing nothing either, and just like, well, whatever, let it all happen and see what happens. Like, that could be irresponsible as well. So,
and I mean, come on, if you want negativity, that's what Twitter is for. We all know that. So, and but I mean, like, honestly, I've seen you be pretty responsive to the fandom on Twitter. So by all means, if you have something you want to say, at Jason Howell over on the tweets. So
no, I have no problems hitting back. My Twitter game has, I will admit, has kind of fallen backwards in recent years, just primarily out of the fact that I recognized in my life that the less I focused so intently on social media, the better quality my life was. So
funny how that works, isn't it?
yeah, so I dial it back. Yeah. So I might not be quick to respond, but I usually try to respond if I can. And if I don't, I'm sorry, but I still love you.
Yeah. Well, and that's okay. And that's okay because yeah, Twitter's a place. And Twitter's like one of those places where you have to kind of like you don't really follow people, you more follow like themes. Like, most of the people that I follow are like, tech themed, obviously. So, that's the kind of stuff that shows up in my timeline. And I actually just opened up Twitter, and it turns out this computer isn't logged into Twitter. So that's really helpful.
Wah, wah.
Oh boy. Anyway, that's a first world problem. But let's transition over to oh, actually, we have a question. Did you ever manage to get data back from your damaged hard drive?
Oh, so this was probably like a month and a half ago. I had a hard drive that had a whole bunch of like, God, how detailed do I want to get on this? Basically, I've been writing music for 20, 30, well, probably close to 30 years at this point, and I have all of these projects digitized on this hard drive, and I didn't have it truly backed up. I had this external drive, and I was planning on backing it up on my NAS, so at least I had it in 2 different places. Anyway,
I can see where this is going.
Yeah, you totally can. One night, I wasn't even doing anything with the computer, but I didn't realize that the external hard drive was plugged into the laptop, and I went to move the laptop. The cord yanked the hard drive, fell off the table onto the hardwood floor, and I mean, I heard that bang, and I was like, that drive is so toast.
Yeah.
And, so I had to kind of go through the 7 stages of grief or whatever you want to say about losing data. And ultimately, I was looking into getting the data restored because I was like, a lot of this stuff is really important.
Yeah.
In the end, I realized how expensive data recovery actually is. And I knew that, but I was like, but if there's any data in my life that's important, it's this. So it's worth it.
Right, totally.
But you're talking probably multiple thousands of dollars, depending, on what you're restoring. So there's that. And then when I really thought about it, I was like, well, wait a minute. The top tier stuff that's on this drive, I do have backed up. Those are the most important projects that I put on YouTube Music, and I have stored on the NAS and everything that I bounce down to MP3, and that's good enough. It's the second and third tier stuff that I don't. But when am I ever going to listen to that? I haven't in 25 years.
Yep.
And I just kind of had to like negotiate with myself and come to a place of acceptance that sometimes it's okay to just let go. And then there's other stuff on the drive that I can't even remember what it is. And if I can't remember what it is, like I'm sure important. If I knew it, I'd be really disappointed, but I can't remember. So I'm like,
totally.
Let it be.
Funny. I used to be a musician myself many moons ago in a different life, and we had a lot of different projects that we would work. We had a couple of albums that we went into, like a kind of a mobile recording studio and recorded and stuff like that. Nice. But we also had this. I don't know what this was. This was like a phase. We called it. So the name of the band was Money Grubbing Bastards. And so we had this phase where we went into like DJ MGB. And we like changed our songs into like dance songs, like dance, like just really weird stuff. And so like I was actually just recently like thinking like, I would really love to have that music. And, this was back in the day when I was kind of like dipping my toe into cloud services, but hadn't quite jumped all the way in yet. So, but anyway, I found an old DVD that we had burned with like all of our DJ MGB stuff on it. Nice. And I put it in, and like, I tried to rip it, and I ripped like, I don't know, we had like 10 tracks, and like 6 of them ripped over okay, but 4 of them like wouldn't go for whatever reason. So I was just like working on this on the CD, trying to like polish it like all nice. Yeah. I finally ripped all 10 tracks, and I put them right into Google Drive where I'll never lose them again.
There you go.
And so it was just like, and I texted all my old bandmates. I'm like, I found them.
Successful recovery. I know. I actually, this isn't the first time that I've had this happen too. Quite a while ago, probably like 10 or 11 years ago, actually probably right around the time that I moved over to TWiT, I had a drive that I had a bunch of projects stored, like legacy music projects from the past 10 years. And suddenly it started making these sounds like, and stuff,
yeah, that's not
and
good.
it wouldn't load and everything. And I went through, once again, I went through the 7 stages of grief of losing all my data or whatever. And then one night I decided I was going to continue, like, just see what I could do. And through, I don't know, some sort of miracle, it spun up. And it took a while, but it got access, and I immediately started moving stuff over, and I was able to recover it.
Nice.
So, I mean, the disappointing thing about that story is, like, you think I would have learned my lesson then, because I came this close to losing it all. And this time I did lose it, but it's okay. I'm just gonna let it go. Life is good. It's not that important, really, at the end of the day.
Hashtag cloud living, baby. So, like, these days I don't lose anything, so a little behind the scenes stuff. I was telling Jason before we hopped onto here, I just moved into a new laptop, and for whatever reason I couldn't get my camera and microphone to work. So, like, I went and grabbed a different laptop and, like, threw it down and, like, barely got on time. And, like, Jason was, like, waiting for me in the studio, like, what the hell? And so and by the time I got logged in, but, like, what was nice is, like, everything is in the cloud. So, like, I was able to pull up my notes for the podcast and pull up,
there you go.
everything like that. So, like, I don't store anything locally anymore. And I don't know when that happened or how it happened, but that's just kind of like how it works now. And that's probably why I have like 10 terabytes of cloud space at this point. So, but
the thing is, we continue to build and build and build our data library. Like, with every year, we're piling that pile higher and higher and higher. And it makes any of these topics more and more complicated as the years go by. What happens when I pass away and I've got this pile of data, and, like, who does it go to and what do they do with it? Like,
what are they
going to want to filter through all of my data crap? Like, probably not. They might be curious, but the second they open it, they're going to be like, I don't care what 99.9% of this stuff is. Like, why are we holding on to it? I don't know. I'm an archivist at heart. It's really hard for me to let go of stuff. That's why this whole hard drive experience, I feel like, was a lesson for me to be like, you know what? Sometimes it's okay to let go, but it's really hard for me to do that.
Yeah, I call myself a PC pack rat. So, like, I never delete anything. And, like, I have files literally from computers that I owned in 2005 stored on a cloud backup somewhere. And it's like, and, like, I'm really terrible with it because, like, it just, especially when you're, like, in audio and video production, it just sucks up so much room. And so, like, I've gotten to the point where, like, I've been able to let go of, like, some of the raw files for, like, old podcasts that I did, and now I just keep the MP3s that are ripped down, you know. But it's
I mean, a lot of the data on
real, man.
Yeah, it is real. A lot of the data on the hard drive, like, I was holding on to it in uncompressed WAV because I was like, you never know. Someday I might want to go back to it and remix it and then, remaster it, whatever. We're talking about recordings from when I was, like, in high school, recording with a like a boom box, So I guarantee you I'm never going to do that. But that's, like, how my mind would work. Gotta keep it all pristine. It's like what I would rather prefer that had done at this point now retrospectively without that hard drive in my possession and having data on that hard drive that now costs me $2,000 to recover. I wish I had just exported it to MP3 because that's all it ever deserved to be, and just continue on with my life.
Yeah, I totally agree. And those are the decisions that we end up having to make. So, well, it's good to know that I've got a fellow PC pack rat out there along with me. So.
I think a lot of us are, whether we're willing to admit it or not.
Yeah. I mean, like, and I actually have folders on my computer called probably deletable because, like,
but you'll never delete it.
But I'll never delete it.
But the fun thing would be just to go to that folder one day and without thinking about it, just highlight it, trash, empty trash, secure delete. Ooh. You won't miss it. You won't miss it. You will not miss it. I guarantee you.
Oh, you are such a rat. That's like waking up in the morning and just dismissing all your notifications before you even pick up your phone.
Like a monster.
Yeah. What kind of monster are you? No, seriously, that's I probably should just go and delete all that stuff.
I'm telling you to do this, but it's really hard for me to even do that. So don't listen to me. But
you first.
Exactly.
So hey, should I share my folder and watch so everybody can watch?
Let's go
me
through it together.
Yeah.
I think that would be really informative for everyone.
That's a hard pass. Anyway, so let's talk about a little bit about music, because music is actually a very big part of your life. How did you first get into like music, and like what were some of your earlier influences, and then we can talk through and to where we are today.
How did I get into music? I mean, I always I always loved music. Well, okay, actually, that's not true. Very early junior high, I was really into the Commodore 64. My love of music really stems from the Commodore 64. Aside from the fact that I was born in, that I was like grew up in the 80s, born in the 70s, but grew up in the 80s and, enjoyed 80s music and everything. But the Commodore 64 was the first time that I got passionate about music. And I suppose that's part of the reason why I work in technology. I was so nerdy about it that I would record songs from the Commodore 64 onto a cassette and listen to them while I was mowing lawns. I was that nerdy about it.
Nice.
And so that's kind of where my love for music started. Somewhere along the, and I had I have one of my best friends who shared that love of Commodore 64 music, and then metal, and then we were into death metal and grindcore and punk rock and everything. We started getting our own instruments and playing music together, and then we created bands. And basically, growing up in junior high and high school, my entire group of friends were all incredibly creative. Some of them were artistic, some of them were musical, but we all did all things together. And so ultimately that just led to a lot of creativity and creation. That's why I have literally a crate full of audio cassettes of different jams that we would get together to do, or me and that guy in his bedroom with a synthesizer, making songs or whatever. And which are all things that I had digitized on that hard drive, by the way. But anyway,
right.
So over the years, we just, that expanded. At some point, my best friend got a 4-track recorder, a 4-track cassette recorder, and started creating songs, layering with 4 tracks. And I thought that was cool, so I did it. And then he created his band, his one-man band called the Fabulous Medicine Men, and I created mine, which was called Yellow Gold. And we would map out our releases. We're talking like senior year of high school ish, senior year of high school. So we would sit down and we would be like, all right, so my first album is called I Don't Want, and it's a 7-inch, and it's got this track on it, and this blah, blah, blah. And we'd map them all out, and then we'd go back to that map and we'd record the songs, and then we'd mix them down onto tape and give them to the other, and he'd give me his, and we'd listen to him. And that was just like, and then over time that evolved. Then we started recording music together. And I don't know, it's just, music's always been a creative facet of my life. I always have songs bubbling around in my head, whether I capture them or not. And I just enjoy it. It's a really, it's just a really enjoyable, fulfilling, creative outlet for me. And I would not be as happy as I am just as a human being if I didn't have it.
What's your primary instrument these days? Guitar, piano, keyboard?
I mean,
Fruity Loops?
I can, I can play them all with varying degree of skill, but I mean, the one that I probably play regularly is guitar.
Okay.
I'd say the instrument that I hold nearest and dearest to my heart is the bass. I would love to get involved with some people locally and start playing some live bass with somebody. I haven't done the live collaborative thing in a really long time. We're talking decades at this point, and I'm yearning for it. I'm actually really wanting to do that. So I see that in my future. But yeah, I'll play. Honestly, when it comes to musical instruments, like, I'm interested in playing whatever. Even if I've never played it before, I'll pick it up and I'll see what I can get out of it. And if I can get even anything remote that sounds remotely interesting out of it, I'll want to bring that into a recording and see what I can do, laying it on a track,
Well, up high, fellow bass player.
There you go.
Yeah. So that went back in my band days. I was the bass player and the singer, and I didn't do either particularly well, but I was really the only one in the band who had the type of personality that could kind of keep a crowd going. So
that's important. That's important.
It is. It's important. And it's an important trait in a front man, but awesome. So I was listening to some of your Yellow Gold stuff that's on SoundCloud. So you link in the show notes. It was, so it seems like recently, how would you describe your genre? It's very electronic. It's very it's very chill. I like it. It's like cool. It's really like super chill type stuff. Like the kind of stuff that not the stuff that I would play while I'm working, because that usually is a little bit more high energy, like shine down type stuff. But that's kind of like stuff that like I would like to have in the background, like while I'm reading or something like that.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I've created over the years as Yellow Gold, kind of emerged from like this little fun little project I did with my best friend, swapping tapes, and just kind of became any music I write by myself. It really kind of seemed like I kind of was drawn to creating things that are a little bit more ethereal, a little bit more kind of spaced out, kind of, I love to play with drones and kind of open strings on a guitar and just letting them ring through instead of feeling like I have to control every string. And I don't know, it's a vibe that I appreciate in music. And it's just kind of the energy that that tends to come to mind when I sit down with a guitar. I tend to not create, rockers, as much as just something that kind of puts my mind into kind of like a numb state, if I can get there. That's like my happy place, I suppose, when I'm listening to music is when I feel a little bit ethereal and like it takes me somewhere. And so I don't know how you describe my music, to be honest. I don't know how any artist describes their music, because it's so influenced by so many different things. But I suppose someone from the outside looking in might say, it's kind of like, it could be electronic indie music, it could be space rock at times, sometimes it's folky. I don't know, honestly. I don't limit myself when I sit down to write music. I just write whatever's there, and to be honest, I'm writing for me, and if anyone else likes it, that's great too.
I think the next podcast that TWiT launches, I think you need to write the intro music for it.
I have been, I've had many people ask me to do that. I have actually written some podcast music. Tom Merritt had a show called Today in Tech History, I think is what it was, on TWiT a while back, and I wrote the music for that.
Nice.
But to be honest, like any time in my life that I've had to write music for a specific thing, that is, I see where you're going with this. Writing music, it really zaps the fun out of it for me. Like I really just enjoy sitting down without any requirement of anything and coming up with something. I was writing music for a while with a guy for a show that was on NPR called Life, Love, and Health. And it was fun. Like it was an interesting project and process, because this episode might be about mental health, or like a story about mental health, and write some music that would match it. And so it was kind of an interesting kind of exercise. But at the end of the day, it really just felt like work. It was like, oh man, I've got to write 2 songs by next Tuesday. I better get creative. Where's my creativity? Come on, creativity. And it's like summoning it out of nowhere is really difficult.
Your creativity cap.
It's like forcing creativity it does not come naturally for me. What comes easy for me is just sitting down and letting things flow.
Well, not to mention, I mean, like you're so busy doing everything else in your life, and especially like in terms of like podcast production, a lot of that is creativity as well, like mixing and matching, like you said, finding the right formulas for guests and for, the chemistry on stage and everything like that. So it's tough. And there's a reason why I don't play bass anymore. So I get all my creativity out through the podcast these days. So, and writing.
I think the fun of bass, from my perspective, was that I didn't, and mind you, every band is different. I'm sure there are plenty of bassists. Well, I know there are plenty of bassists who write music for the band. Sure. But I enjoyed not having to write the music as much as just writing my own part for music that was already written.
Follow along with it.
And getting creative in my own domain without having to be responsible for the entire thing. So that's what I really enjoyed about bass.
Yeah. So let's shift gears a little bit. We're actually kind of running up against the clock here too. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Movember, because you are you are letting your facial hair grow, and in celebration of. I never understood where is it just mustache and November? Is that where
Yeah.
Movember came from? Okay,
That's my understanding. Yes.
gotcha.
Yes.
So like I'm a little bit fuzzy, and I decided when I heard you talking about this on AAA that like, all right, he's doing it. I'm not gonna shave my stuff, so that when
Yeah.
he comes onto the show, we're here in solidarity. Now, unlike you, I'm going to go shave like minutes after we get off the air here. But
I appreciate your commitment to meeting me here in this furry state, even though our furry states are wildly different. Like,
yes. But that's okay. That's but yeah, I called you off the air babyface Howell, and that's perfectly fine.
It's perfectly appropriate, actually. You're looking at 2.5 weeks of facial hair growth here. My face does not produce hair follicles.
Same.
Yours is 2.5 weeks as well.
Minus October 24th, I believe, was the last time I shaved.
Man, so. Wow, it puts so many things into perspective for me.
Yeah,
like, this is literally the first time I've ever grown out the hair on my face. Like, and I'm not exaggerating, because I knew that not much would grow. Like, it's just not in my genes. My dad couldn't do it. My grandpa on my dad's side couldn't do it. It's just. It's what I was born with.
I mean, honestly, if we could trade places, I probably would, because
I had people tell me that.
I would not mind. Although the one time I shaved my beard was the last time I shaved my beard was back in 2003. I remember that because it was the year I got married. And the day after I shaved, I went and picked up a coworker of mine, and he got in the car, he took one look at me and said, either lose some weight or grow it back. And that's where I've been ever since, because he's right. Yeah, this covers up a lot.
Well, you're lucky, at least, because right now, like, beards, and it's not just now, it's for a while now, beards are in vogue, man. So you're on the right side of the beard trend right now. Even if I wanted to get there, I couldn't. So
I have a friend of mine, actually a geocaching partner of mine. He will grow out a beard so it's like a foot long, and then like the next time I see him, it'll be shaved. And I'm like, how do you decide? Like, because he's gone through this like so many times, and I'm like, he's just like, well, when I get sick of it, I shave it, and when I get sick of not having it, I grow it out. I'm like, all right, that's
there you go.
See, for me, it's mostly laziness, but this time it's solidarity. But most of the time,
I appreciate that.
It's laziness. So, but so what's the cause that you're supporting with Movember?
Well, I mean, with Movember, I mean, it's primarily focused on men's health issues, and that could be, a number of things, all different kinds of cancers and everything like that. I focus mine more on mental health, just kind of as a general kind of compass around my time with Movember, primarily just because like it's the one that I think rings closest to my life, at least in the last 3 or 4 years. I've undergone a lot of work on myself. I participate in a men's group, a weekly men's group that has been just incredibly valuable. Like, I can't even tell you how valuable that group is. That's with an organization called Mankind Project, if anyone wants to look it up, but it's amazing.
Link in the show notes.
I actually, had my weekly meeting with them last night, and it's just a really great place. As a man, I can speak for myself, but I think it's a pretty common thing that as men, we kind of, as we get older, it becomes more comfortable to not speak up and not share how we feel about certain things, or feel like our purpose is to provide and to go and, to bottle up those emotions and everything like that. And I've just realized in the last 3 years how much I have done that in my life, and how important it is when I do the work to kind of take off the top of that bottle and just be my human self, not put up the armor to protect, myself from the world and the world from the true me, but actually to show up as the real me in this world, and realize that when I'm doing that, I'm being honest to myself, and through that, I'm being honest to the world. Like, if you like me because I'm me, and not because I'm like this version of me. And I've had a lot of work around that the last 3 years, and it's been really valuable to my relationship with my wife, to my relationship with my job, and how I show up on the shows. I mean, there's no question that doing a podcast, we are, I mean, podcasting is a performance art.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's very easy to get into podcasting and to think you have to be a certain something, or what I suffered from a very long time, that I had to be so smart that I knew something about everything.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like that was my responsibility, was to know something about everything. And the last couple of years I've relaxed on that and been like, you know what? It's okay that I don't know something about everything, because I'm human, just like all the people that are watching and listening to the shows. Like, I'm learning along with them. Like, that's not a deficiency. It's just part of being human. And it's really enabled me to feel a lot more fulfilled in the work that I do. And just knowing that I'm being as real as I can be every day of my life, from now into hopefully eternity. So
Right.
That's kind of been my reason for the Movember, and focusing that on mental health, because I think it's really important. If I will be working on myself for the rest of my life, and prior to the last 3 years, I wasn't, but I'm so happy that I am now. Like, it's made such a change in my life.
That's awesome. I think for me, similar thing about, building up the walls and, being the tough guy all the time. And yeah, that definitely, my wife changed that in me, very early on in our relationship. She I don't know what it was, but she said, you used to like not care about, or you wouldn't show that you cared about things, even though you did. And I need you to like show me. And so like, right. and really, and that's really been like one of the best things. And in terms of like knowing everything, and, doing, knowing a little bit about everything, and totally agree with that. I had Leo Laporte was one of the reasons why I completely changed my interview style to, like, it used to be that I felt I had to know like a lot about a given subject going into it.
Right.
And I read a piece on his it's a couple of years ago, but I'm just like, and since then I've just kind of adopted the dumb guy in the room asking questions philosophy. And I love that, because there are certain concepts that are way above my head, and just that I will never understand, and that's fine. But yeah, like, just, and like I said, Leo is a big inspiration in changing that attitude and changing that style. So
I know which interview you're talking about. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to interviewing, I've interviewed a lot of people on the shows, and really at the end of the day, it's about curiosity. And if you can dial into your own personal curiosity into that person and who they are and why they're there and everything, then you aren't required to know all the details, because the part of the fun is the exploration, is the revealing of that information based on your conversation, and getting them to kind of open up in new ways and everything. So yeah, I read that interview as well. That was a very inspirational interview, as far as the interview with Leo. As far as how to interview, it kind of sounds a little meta, but
it was a little bit meta, but that's okay. And speaking of revealing information, why don't we go ahead and reveal some information about you, because we're at the time of the show where it's time for you to tell everybody how everybody can find you, as if they don't know who you are, like me, whatever. But
why not?
You the man. So yeah, well, how would people find you on the internet? Where's your stuff?
Well, the shows that I'm doing, just go to twit.tv. That's the TWiT network, can be found there. All the shows that we do, lots of weekly technology news shows, lots of good stuff, if I do say so myself. So check that out. You can find me on Twitter at Jason Howell. And then my music is yellowgoldmusic.com. If you want to find any of the music that I produced in the last like 10 or 11 years. I have 3 albums up there, and someday I'll be working on a 4th album, but I've got some work to do before that happens. So it'll happen.
Maybe we can do a collab. I'll dust off the bass, and we can.
I'll send you a track and be like, "Give me your best bass line."
Yeah, and then it'll be terrible, and you'll be like, "Yeah, never mind."
I'll just put a bunch
awesome.
of distortion on it.
There
That
you go.
works.
There you go. That always works. That's always worked for me. So, well, Jason Howell, thank you so much for coming on and going beyond a Doud with us, and for being awesome. And for everybody who tuned in, I want to thank you for stopping by and getting the chats all flutter. And it was very awesome. So, thank you, Jason, for coming on, and thanks everybody else for giving us the benefit of the Doud.